We are talking with Ed Maloney, who is a member of the Michigan High School Lacrosse Coaches Association Hall of Fame. And we're talking with Ed a little bit about conversations in history. And Ed, you're currently the head coach at Siena Heights University. And I just wanted to say hello and welcome, and I appreciate you sitting down and having a conversation with us.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you and get the opportunity to talk a little bit about the history of lacrosse.
I guess the easiest thing, and I've kind of done these with all the other interviews, is to start from the beginning. And I guess that's for both of us, it's age, but maybe you could start from where it all started, because you've had a variety of backgrounds in a variety of sports, both as a teacher, an athletic administrator, football, lacrosse, a number of things across your background. So I'll let you start.
Well, this is my 50th year of coaching.
Wow.
Started in 1970. But my interest in lacrosse goes back even before that, believe it or not, and I go way back. So let's be honest about this. As we talked about a little bit earlier, back 1957, first became interested in sports in general.
Right.
I was in 6th grade at the time, so for some of the people out there, this is ancient history.
And you grew up in St. Clair Shores.
Grew up in St. Clair Shores. Interest in football, 1957. That should ring a bell with some people, as that's the last year the Lions won national championship, and I've been suffering along with everybody else. But the point being, that year, interest that the Lions playing the Cleveland Browns for the World Championship, at that time, the World Championship, articles about Jim Brown began to surface, rookie for the Cleveland Browns. And articles were on his ability to play lacrosse, All-American lacrosse player at Syracuse. And started piquing my interest a little bit then. All right, we didn't have lacrosse in St. Clair Shores. We didn't have lacrosse too much in the late 50s, early 60s in Michigan in general, obviously. The second thing that led me to lacrosse was my interest in hockey. Obviously, St. Clair Shores, being located near Lake St. Clair, we skated down by the Grosse Pointe Yacht Club. On Lake St. Clair, Milk River, which ran through St. Clair Shores at the time,
right,
and Gordie Howe Hockey Land out there. That eventually led to me, when I went to college at the University of Dayton, taking a part-time job when I came home on breaks at Olympia Stadium.
I got to back you up. How does somebody go from St. Clair Shores to Dayton? I'm curious on that.
It was one of those things, you make a campus visit,
You liked it.
and that's the place.
Okay.
That was the place.
Okay.
But as would be at the time, most of my dorm mates and roommates were from the East, Pittsburgh, New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut, New Jersey. And I can remember that first spring down there. Came out of the dorm one Saturday morning, thought there'd be a softball pickup game going somewhere. Lo and behold, they're running around with all these funny sticks down on the field below our dorm, which was up on a hill. And so I had a choice. Hey, go back and study that day, or I go down and join them.
Did Dayton have an NCAA team?
No, not at that time.
Okay.
At that time, we were just picking up, and
Okay.
Over the 4 years that I was there, we literally went and traveled to play other local groups. I won't even say we're playing colleges because nobody was sponsored.
Club-like?
at that time.
More club-like?
Well, very loose club. Let's
Okay.
put it that way.
Like the NLL might used to have been.
Maybe even looser.
The Nickel League, as some people
Yeah,
may
I know,
reference
but
to.
it was probably looser
Wow.
than that.
I think that's possible.
I mean, we went to Miami of Ohio, we went to Ohio Wesleyan, we went to Denison, none of the big schools,
Right.
obviously, but so that's where I learned lacrosse.
Okay.
And after graduating from Dayton, had my first coaching job at St. Joan of Arc Middle School, St. Clair Shores, place that I went to school at. But also I kept the part-time job that I had at Olympia Stadium, and after events at Olympia Stadium, we got the opportunity to either skate after Red Wing games, or in the case early 70s, box lacrosse was played at Olympia Stadium, and we got a chance to interact with the players, both from the Detroit team, the Olympics, and in particular I remember the Peterborough team, Peterborough, Ontario. Fantastic players and really great guys in terms of just teaching the skill and messing around with us, after an event.
The big barn on Grand River was quite a place.
My big claim to fame at Olympia was I got to serve lunch to the Beatles when they played Olympia Stadium in 1966. So
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, we served them lamb chops. They didn't want lamb chops. This is going to take people back. They wanted steak from Carl's Chop House.
Really?
Yeah, so
Well, that makes
just a little,
sense.
so Olympia was a good experience for me, but it was also the trigger for lacrosse.
I grew up outside of, we used to get on a bus at Joy in Farmington, and you could drive all the way down Joy to Grand River, and you could go to afternoon games. And your
Correct.
parents would give you $3, and we were 12, 13, whenever we were, and drive down. I mentioned the story one other time. I don't think my parents, if I was living in that area now, would allow me to get on a bus and go down, what was it then, the Olympia area. There was an old story, Northwestern High School is right next to Olympia, and some kids decided to park cars there one day, and they did. And here comes the cops, and everybody got a ticket. The kids were entrepreneurial enough that they parked cars, but they weren't supposed to park them in the high school. So it was a great place.
Before I worked there, when I was in high school, we used to take the bus down to Olympia Stadium. We had to take a couple of transfers from the
Right.
side, obviously. But we used to wait outside for the smokers to come outside the building, and then we sneak in with the smokers and standing room only watch Red Wing games. So
Well, and if you also remember, on the west side of the building, when you would park, you'd come in the back, and everybody would park towards Grand River.
correct.
My uncle would always occasionally would go early and make sure he would get first and get a ticket. Well, one day he got there, it was a sellout, so he couldn't get out because once they closed the back gate, he had to listen to the entire game in his car because there was no tickets to be bought. Their standing room only was even gone.
Yeah, so-
You got down way too early. I want to back up. Did you
Sure.
always knew you wanted to be a teacher?
Actually, the real story is no. I went to the University of Dayton to earn my degree, and I wanted to join the Air Force, the Navy, and be a pilot. What happened was I graduated in August of '69. The Air Force couldn't take me to officer training school until January. I came home at St. Joan of Arc, as I said, my first teaching job. They needed a teacher to teach phys ed and coach 8th grade football, and because the phys ed teacher had just been drafted at that time because of the Vietnam War going on. They got me a temporary certificate. I thought this was great. $6,000 job. Wow.
For two positions.
For two, well, it's $500 for coaching.
Right. Right.
But I thought this is great. I called up the military and said,
Thanks.
well, I think this is what I'm going to do. And that's how I ended up getting into teaching and coaching.
Lacrosse wasn't at Joan of Arc at those days.
No. Lacrosse wasn't even in the picture.
Right, because I was going to say.
But while I was there, and before I had my first high school job, I came across an article that said lacrosse, football spring conditioner. And it was in a all sports magazine. And I tore that page out, and now, for some reason, it just stuck. Everything flashed back to my days at Dayton, and here we go. And I began, when I started getting high school jobs, making it a mission to make high school lacrosse a possibility.
I've had a thought in my head for the last 45 seconds, and we'll go on from Joan of Arc. But
Okay.
would you have played Jimmy Brown as an attacker or a midfielder?
I'd keep him as a midfielder because of his running ability, his strength.
Can you imagine him playing today?
You know, he could play defense, and
Right.
you want a two-way midi with him, all right?
You could play any place on the
Yeah,
field.
hey, you have a complete player. Why
Yeah.
only use him in one position?
What a nightmare for a mismatch.
Oh, I can't
couldn't stop
imagine. I mean, there's been old clips that they've shown recently of him. Just can't imagine. Especially in today's game if he was playing.
I think how dominant he was in football, running through
Right.
guys that were supposed to tackle him.
Well, he gave a lot of credit to lacrosse for
Yeah.
his running ability.
Yeah.
And again, it was all part of a package, you know, where here's this guy talking about lacrosse and how it contributed to football. And here I am, a football guy at the time, you know, trying to find the best of everything for the athletes that I'm coaching. And we don't have lacrosse. At that time, football players ran track. Okay. Well, not everybody is a track runner, right? And, you know, all of a sudden, as you find out more and more about the sport, you see the advantages and the combination that
Right.
lacrosse brings in using the other sports in the game itself.
Where from Joan of Arc then did you go?
At that point, I went to Monroe Catholic Central as a teacher and assistant coach in football, and then I thought for a few years I'd go up to Croswell, Lexington, try the public school route. I'd been Catholic schools my entire life. And of course, you're looking at the paycheck and you think, okay, it's going to be greater and better and things like that at the time. But after 4 years, I decided I wanted to get back in the Catholic League. Okay, and that's where, when I came back to Pontiac Catholic, which is today Notre Dame Prep.
In the same location it is.
It is, same location. And that's when I began talking with the athletic director at the time about, can we start lacrosse here?
So Notre Dame Prep, you started the program.
Correct. Harper Woods, Notre Dame, and Notre Dame Prep.
Harper Woods Notre Dame became Notre Dame Prep. Am I correct?
Eventually it did. For a while, for about 10 years, both existed.
Okay.
Okay.
So you were at Pontiac first?
I was at Pontiac Catholic first.
And then
Then I went to Bishop Foley.
Okay.
And convinced them after 6 years finally to allow me to start the lacrosse. Bought the equipment, had everything ordered, ready for the program to roll. And Harper Woods Notre Dame, my high school, asked me to come over to there, so I went to Harper Woods.
Were you a bit of a visionary in some of these schools? Because apparently you seem to keep running into the same block of wood.
But somebody has to knock down the trees. It's
right.
like when I go play golf, they ask me to go out first and cut down the trees so everybody else has a clear fairway. But yeah, that's it was convincing because it was the same old argument that you're going to be taking somebody from another sport, which was entirely untrue, never happened. And it just gave another group of young men, in this case, an opportunity to play another sport.
You had a short tenure in the public schools, but my question is, do you think it was easier to sell lacrosse in a private school, like a Catholic school, that it might have been in a public school, given that it was more of a prep school kind of process?
No, because at the time, so we're talking, the late 80s, Croswell, Lexington, late 70s to early 80s, and then my transition to Pontiac Catholic to Bishop Foley during the 80s, and into the 90s to Notre Dame, Harper Woods Notre Dame, and Notre Dame Prep. I never ran into that attitude that it was a prep sport, a prep school sport. It was always, budget, always a big concern. Still is today in some cases. But the thing was, we don't have room for another sport. Title IX was there, but not really a big issue because in the schools I was at, there was already more female sports than there was male sports by 1 or 2. So that really never became an issue at any of those schools. But no, it was just, where are you going to play? You're going to steal athletes. We're not big enough to have this many teams. It was the same arguments over and over again.
So you're at Pontiac. You're at Pontiac Catholic.
Correct.
Then you go to Harper Woods Notre Dame.
I go to Bishop Foley.
Bishop Foley.
I know. Follow my track record. It's pretty.
And then to Harper Woods Notre Dame.
Correct. Then Harper Woods Notre Dame.
Did you ever get the lacrosse program at Bishop Foley off the ground?
I got it started. I had bought the equipment, bought the uniforms and everything, and then I left that summer.
Okay. Gotcha.
Okay, but that following year the program was up and running.
Okay.
Okay, because everything was in place.
Gotcha.
They had to hire a new coach then.
Harper Woods had a lacrosse program when you got there? So you started. Okay, so
it took me
start
two years to convince the AD, who had been a former baseball coach there, and the administration. And if anybody is out there who coached against us at that time, they'll remember the famous 90-yard field at Harper Woods Notre Dame with the big brick wall at the end that was literally 2 feet off the end line, and so shots would rebound off that brick
wall.
Like
the old Castech football field. With the drain in the corner.
Correct.
Same thing.
So we played on, all I could say is the box was legal. The 10 yards in between was very short.
You have an advantage, a little bit like Ann Arbor Green Hills has a 95-yard field.
Correct.
So, if you throw the ball hard enough, it goes all the way up to the freeway.
I know.
So it's
well, at Green Hills they have a bigger budget. They could afford to say we needed a wall to keep the balls in play.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Talk a little bit about how long were you at Notre Dame, Harper Woods?
Harper Woods 3 years, and then the principal asked me to move out to Notre Dame Prep to open up the new school.
Was that when they started having conversations about closing that school?
Yes. Well, the word was it was not going to close.
Right.
But the rumors were because 6 of us teachers were asked to leave from the Harper Woods staff.
It was a relatively long, laborious.
It was. In 2005, I believe, is when Harper Woods Notre Dame finally closed, and we started Notre Dame Prep in 1994.
So when you went back to Notre Dame Prep, having had spent 3 years coaching at
Pontiac,
Harper Woods
yeah.
type deal, you then did you take over the lacrosse program back that had started at Notre Dame Prep?
Correct.
In
I
Pontiac.
was hired as a teacher, football coach, lacrosse coach
Okay.
at Notre Dame Prep. And then at semester of the first year, I became athletic director again because the athletic director left.
You could have wrote a manual on how to start a program from scratch, because there wasn't a pitfall you didn't face.
I think we faced them all. And here what was beautiful, at least about starting the program at Notre Dame Prep, which has gone on to be very, very successful. I had some very famous coaches there also.
No doubt.
All right, was that we only had 187 students, male and female, and we were starting lacrosse, track, baseball, golf,
Right.
and we got by with 17, 18 players, but we ran a 7-8 game schedule, and
No feeder program.
no feeder program,
No
and
junior varsity program.
and we got it going.
Right.
We got it going for the 4 years I was there.
How many kids are in that school now?
Ooh,
600?
600 easy, but it has a middle school now
Right.
of 200 or 300 and full middle school program. While I was there, before I left, we started Marist Academy lacrosse, 7th and 8th grade lacrosse. So it was up and running by the time I left.
What did you remember? What do you remember finally about Harper Woods and Notre Dame Prep?
Well, Harper Woods, Notre Dame, there was an emotional attachment. Once I got into teaching and coaching, it was my goal to always go back to the school that I had attended and played. I had played football and hockey there, and I thought that was the end all. And I thought my career, at least from a,
You could have stayed there for a long time.
I was going to stay there, all right, and
You knew the neighborhood.
truly
you knew the
enjoyed
kids.
truly enjoyed it. We had moved back. Our family had moved back to St. Clair Shores, so we were right in the neighborhood again. Our girls went to St. Joan of Arc, so we were. It was almost like we were recycling. The family was in that cycle again,
Right.
and then, like I said, memories were fond right there of Harper Woods, Notre Dame. Both as a student, I love school. I can proudly say I only missed one day of school in high school there. I mean, I love to be there in the environment. I love to be there as a teacher and a coach in the environment. But then the administration said, we're going to open up a new Notre Dame out in Pontiac.
You went to Catholic school, obviously.
Correct.
What was the allure of a Catholic school or a private school versus a public school?
For me personally, it was both the discipline, but I guess a better word is the accountability, okay, as a student. And my parents were strict Catholics. Don't eat meat on Friday. Those kinds of things.
I grew up in that household.
So, it was the environment I grew up in. The expectations, I knew the expectations. I had no problem with them. And, the same thing as a teacher coach. I brought those same values, I think, I hope, to the students that I taught. And not that I wanted them to be like me, right? But I wanted them to think and understand and learn.
5 years I was at St. Mary's, the coolest thing that we did was a pregame prayer, which obviously I can't do in a public school.
Correct.
I do it privately. But as crazy as that's going to sound, it was one of the things that made me the most distraught about leaving, because it was just one step more.
Well, one of the things I hear about from my athletes, and I do hear about them from Facebook and things like that, and how many of them, wow, are almost grandparents now too, that many of them say was our, before a game, our walk to the chapel. And many of them remember that. And to this day, they still, the stories about the games and everything get bigger and bigger and better all the time, but that's up to them. I still keep a thumb on reality for them as to what happened, but there was the faith aspect, of teaching in Catholic schools also.
I was recently at my hometown and at a restaurant, and there were some friends that I'd gone to high school with, and there was a story being told, and the story was about how somebody had scored the winning touchdown, and I tried to explain to them that there wasn't that many winning touchdowns.
Maybe at a 7-point game there wasn't that many.
Right. I'd lived the story, and it wasn't the same story I was listening
Correct.
to. It had gotten slightly moved to the right, and it was much more entertaining than the story I'd remembered. But that's just, I think, age fogged some of those memories.
That's why the reunions are fun, and I've been invited to a number of reunions.
Right.
40-year reunions.
Well, that's why you should always go to a reunion by yourself, because if you drag your significant other,
Sure.
they got to sit there and listen to a bunch of stuff that nobody cares about.
They had no idea what you're talking about.
So tenure at Notre Dame Prep, somewhere along the lines. Were you still living in St. Clair Shores while commuting, or did you actually
then we moved out to Oxford.
Okay.
We moved out to Oxford, and we lived there for 4 years, and I was at Notre Dame Prep for 4 years, and again,
Ann Arbor come in? Ann Arbor,
well, that's where, again, we go back to the athletic director position. Notre Dame Prep had grown, I said, from 187 students to now almost 500 students in the high school, another 250 in the Marist Academy, full sports program in both. I'm still the head football coach. I'm the head lacrosse coach. And I went to the administrator and said, we talk about this every year, that we review whether I want to continue as athletic director or not. And I said, my time is up. Well, I made that decision too late in the year. Couldn't get me back into the classroom. I really felt, again, that I was losing touch with the athletes I was coaching, or the potential athletes that I could coach. And I think the programs were beginning to suffer a little bit, from an attention standpoint. That's the big thing. And Ann Arbor Gabriel Richard opened up. And by the way, every time I was able to make a move, we all know Catholic school pay isn't that great, but it was a promotion,
right,
financially.
Okay.
My wife was always asking, why are we doing this?
Right.
Well, there's a little more money in the pot here every time we made the move. And so going to Ann Arbor Gabriel Richard, I was able to go back into the classroom full time. I was able to coach full time again. And eventually I got the lacrosse program going there also.
The end of that, any thoughts on Gabriel Richard? I mean, it's grown into a terrific program.
Yeah, right. Well, actually, my wife still drives her athletic trips there. She's still the bus driver for their athletic trips. So
Is that right?
I'm able to keep tabs. I hear all the stories, good or bad, that are going on, whether it's administration or coaching. Yeah, still keep tabs that way. All right. It was a situation that when I was looking to retire, the Siena Heights opportunity came up, and I think, again, they hired me in particular because I had the patience to start a program from scratch, and my expectations were realistic, as they were every time I started a high school program.
Now, before we get to Siena Heights, because I got some real specific questions. You had some club experience at the collegiate level.
Correct.
You were at Eastern Michigan.
Right.
And was that just for fun?
No, I had been at Ann Arbor Richard a couple of years, and now this is really going to sound convoluted. I had been at Richard a couple of years coaching football. I was not the AD at the time. Believe it or not, Ann Arbor Pioneer opened up, and I went over for an interview for lacrosse. Well, the administration at Ann Arbor Gabriel Richard didn't want their football coach coaching. Right. Lacrosse. It wouldn't look good in the Ann Arbor News. That's what they were saying.
Exactly.
All right. So I walked over to Eastern Michigan. I saw they had an opening. They had advertised in the Ann Arbor News. I walked over there, talked to the captains, and coached there a year. And I was going to come back, but then that's when Ann Arbor Gabriel Richard asked me to start the lacrosse program at Ann Arbor Gabriel Richard.
Do you think today a high school football coach could coach more than one sport? And I say that based on, there are some guys doing it, but football has become, as a head football coach, certainly has more responsibilities than most other head coaches in high school.
Correct.
It's become an 11-month sport for all kinds of reasons, from 7-on-7 to the summer. Do you think you could be as effective as you were now doing the same job?
No, and I'll give you a big reason why. If I can jump ahead a little bit here. I retired from Catholic schools, coaching and teaching, in 2008. The year I was hired at Siena Heights. Obviously at Siena Heights we didn't start the program right away. I mean, we weren't up and running. You had to let people know,
right,
we're here, we have a program, okay, please come. All right. So our goal was to get the program up and running by 2010. That being said, we had built a home down here in Dundee the Dundee football staff came to my front door, asked me to coach their quarterbacks. I went to our athletic director at Siena Heights. Is it okay if I do this? Sure, keep in touch with the high school. The next year, they wanted me to be the offensive coordinator at Dundee. Now we're a year away from getting the program running at Siena Heights. The third year, the head coach became the athletic director. They asked me to take over as the head football coach. Now we're up and running at Siena Heights. Okay, so here I am coaching high school football as a head coach again, not teaching there, which goes back to violating a lot of principles I believed in.
Right.
But I had got to know those kids. Coaching lacrosse, and for the next 3 seasons in the fall, I would go back and forth on a day. So a day like today, I would start out going to Siena Heights, take care of my office duties, recruiting, things like that, and teach one class in the fall. 2:30, leave Siena Heights, go to football practice. 6 o'clock, come back to Siena Heights for a night fall practice. Right? Wow, I'm telling you, that's hard to do. And I saw, and this is what I would think would happen at the high school level. That's why I was so definite in my answer. My assistant football coaches at Dundee were running the weightlifting program, etc., in the off season. At fall ball, my assistant coach at Siena Heights was running the weightlifting conditioning program at Siena Heights. Where am I? And I'm telling kids, you have to be committed to the program.
Right.
Now, that being said, let's take it back to your question about high school. I don't think so today. I think it's very difficult as a head coach. Assistant coach, I think it works out great, but as a head coach, you might be able to be a head coach in one sport and an assistant coach
right.
in another sport.
Just different responsibilities.
Correct, because you don't have the off-the-field responsibility. But the big thing is, and this is what I saw, all of a sudden I caught myself saying, well, how committed am I to this program? I'm asking them to be there 100% of the time. I am not. And at both ends. And so I don't think it can be done effectively at the high school level.
Okay, so you come to Siena Heights at 62. Is that fair? Because you said you're 72
yeah,
now.
Yeah.
So give or take.
Yeah, I was 62.
Is that at the age of 64? I'm asking this question. Is that did you look at age as maybe I should be out fishing and playing golf, or is that explain that a little bit.
I should bring my wife in to answer this question, because I've said a few times, well, maybe this is it. What are you going to do?
Okay.
That's
so
her response.
The fire's still burning. The fire's still burning.
Correct.
Okay.
I love practice. I absolutely love practice. I love putting together a puzzle, and that's what it is. The games are pure joy. I know we don't think that way as coaches in the middle of competition, but the games themselves are the gravy, the ice cream, the cream of the crop, whatever. But everything else that leads to it,
right.
I absolutely love the challenge of everything that leads to that moment of going onto the field.
Now, Siena Heights, when you started, was looking at athletics as a building block to make the university. It was basically a nurses' college. Is that fair?
Education college.
Education college?
Right, education.
But nursing was a big part of that.
No, that came in right about the time of lacrosse being started.
Did Adrian, and the way Jeff Docking had taken Adrian in its direction, and they've gained a lot of notoriety with their athletic facilities and all the other kinds of things, did Siena Heights, was that on the same kind of model? Because you now have football. You have, Adrian's not that big, and you've got two fairly good-sized universities there.
Well, let me tell you about how lacrosse got started at Siena Heights. Before I arrived there, the year before I arrived there, they did a survey among the students. Do you want hockey or lacrosse? And the students chose lacrosse. I agree, how did that come about?
Right.
All right. Hockey or lacrosse, and the students, and nobody, I can tell you, nobody at Siena Heights knew anything about lacrosse, the structure, the integral parts of it, building a program, leagues that you would play at, who you're going to play. I am telling you, I was the brightest person. My lacrosse IQ on campus in 2008 was off the charts compared to everybody else.
And having been a Pied Piper to some extent, helped. Obviously, you were an expert.
Oh, yeah, well, I could convince them this is
Right.
the way you want to go.
Well, it goes back to the same experience, Rod. You've been down it, so from that,
Right.
Has there been their thrust as Siena Heights thrust into athletics been a real conscious effort to grow the university that way?
Yes, because right now you're right. At the time, men's lacrosse was added. All right.
Not too long after that, football.
Okay, football, men and women's bowling. Okay.
Bowling's not a sport. I get that part.
Don't let.
I'm kidding.
I hope this isn't reaching out to the bowlers in the world.
My joke to the bowlers is that if they really want to get a true experience at the high school level, they should have to smoke a cigarette and drink a beer before they go to compete. That's a joke. Anybody listening,
but then cheer and dance was added, so there was a push to increase the student population. All right, and then women's lacrosse was added 2 years after men's lacrosse.
When you got there, how many students were there?
Total, there was probably right around 500 or so.
Where are you now?
We're just under 1,100.
So, I mean, that's pretty significant.
Right, and about 650 of the 1,100, 700 are student athletes.
Okay.
So everybody there from an environment standpoint is pretty much in the same boat because they have classes and they have practice schedules. And, you don't have the sympathy of too many other people saying, wow, I'm overloaded with things right here, because they're in the same boat somehow, some way.
Now, you're in the NAIA.
Correct.
Which is a lot different than the NCAA.
Absolutely.
Helps you? Hurts you?
It definitely helps us. I believe, if I can quote a couple of coaches from the NCAA, we're the bandit league. What that means is some of our practices are anti-NCAA. For example,
why?
Well, we have 24 weeks throughout the year we can practice and play.
Okay.
Okay, we're monitored. Okay, but fall ball, we have up to 8 weeks we can use. We can use as many as we want, but we use September and October for fall ball practices, plus add a couple of scrimmages against other schools. Then still have 16 weeks. Come spring, it's our winter term, but come spring, and playoffs don't count in that 16 weeks. So really, we're only using maybe 22, 21 weeks out of the 24. Now, let me give you an advantage right here. We've been fortunate. For the last 5 years, we've either qualified for the MCLA National Tournament or the NAIA National Tournament. In between, 2 years ago, 3 years ago now, we ended up 7-3 and did not qualify for the NAIA tournament. We were able to use 2 more weeks after our season ended to prepare for the next season of practice. So those juniors, sophomores, freshmen coming back, we were able to get 2 more weeks of practice in and implement new ideas, things like that, in prep for fall ball the following year. So there's a big difference right there from an NCAA standpoint.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
The other one is we don't have a national signing date. We don't have a window in terms of when we can recruit, contact, walk in. We're able to, at some events, at some periods of time during the summer, during the spring, to literally walk across the field to talk to an athlete about coming to Siena Heights. And so there's some inherent advantages to being in an NAIA school.
Okay. I don't know what the tuition is at Siena Heights. I'll just use a number. Approximately, what is the cost to go to school at Siena Heights?
$27,000.
Okay. You're also able to, what can you offer them in terms of packages that maybe the NCAA can't?
We can offer a pure, first of all, we can offer an partial athletic scholarship, okay, based on ability. Who determines that? The coaching staff determines that. So $6,000, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000, $12,000 we can offer. The academic part is huge. If they are 3.5 or better, they're going to get anywhere up to $8,000 to $10,000 in addition to the athletic.
From a coaching perspective, are you locked into a number for your budget? 'Cause if you had 30 kids, you can't all offer them the same thing. My
No.
point to it is, if you're an NCAA team, you're given 12.5 scholarships for a particular sport. So are you locked into a dollar value for your program?
The NAIA is locked into 12.5 scholarships also.
So whatever the
Okay.
value of that is.
But we're on partial scholarships.
Okay.
So, all right. So you have to understand.
Right.
We're playing, but the academic doesn't count.
Right. They're completely separate issues.
Correct.
And they'd get academic if they were going to another university
Right,
anyway.
right.
If they've got those kinds of grades.
And if they're up to 3.8, 3.9, 4.0, they can compete for a full scholarship, which would include athletic money.
Okay.
All right, but be primarily academic money.
Then let me ask the better question. You're basically on par financially on the athletic side with Division I and Division II schools.
Division One would be a reach, I think, only because of the status.
Okay.
All right.
Just dollar to dollar.
Correct.
Okay.
I remember a couple of years ago, I read a report that the average scholarship, just athletic scholarship for lacrosse, I believe this was 3 years ago, 2016. The average scholarship for D1, D2, NAIA lacrosse was $6,000, pure athletic scholarship. So we're on par with everybody else there. So now, based on your individual ability, we have the flexibility of changing that number based on your athletic ability.
So at the end of the day, you do have an end string
Yes.
of what you can spend.
Every year we have to meet with our athletic director
Right.
for the financial report, the enrollment report.
Not all 30 kids are getting 10 grand.
Correct.
So that's,
correct.
and I'm asking that
But
question
it's
because
not,
I think
it's not prorated in terms of if I gave somebody 10, I have to give somebody 5.
No, I get that.
Okay, right.
But my point to it is there's a bucket of how much money
Yes,
you have.
right.
And I'm asking that question because I think there's a lot of misconception of NAIA. And I asked the question based on, I have a high school senior right now who's committed to Lawrence Tech. He told me the other day he's going to practice with Lawrence Tech. He gets 2 times a year that he's able to
Correct.
practice.
Yes.
And I kind of balked at the idea of a high school kid practicing with a college team. Men versus kids. What if I lose this kid to an ankle because somebody's, as I was promised, it's just to get a look at him and all the rest of it. Is that a practice that makes sense to you?
It does in general, specifically where we have had people come to practice is the goalie position. Okay, we've only had 1 or 2 field players that we've said, if you want, and we leave it up to the athlete. We don't say, hey, you have to come and practice with us. We want to take a look at you.
Right.
All right. I'm going back to if we've done our due diligence real quick in terms of watching them play lacrosse, basketball, football, soccer, whatever the case may be, we know what they're like. Okay. And we've seen them in lacrosse, obviously, play in high school. But we have had goalies come in to get a workout to see what they're like. And they don't go through necessarily a whole practice. It's just we tell them ahead of time during your visit, bring your equipment. If you want to get a workout in, it's totally up to you. All right.
I think with all the eligibility rules the MHSAA puts in place, you have to let a high school kid go play a college practice. It just.
Well, now there is a restriction. Once they're enrolled, and enrollment can be taking place right now.
Okay.
Once they're enrolled, you can't do that.
Gotcha.
Okay.
So it's a slightly
Right.
loosening of the NCAA rules for
In other words, right now for next year, the 2019-2020 year, we have 5 players signed and enrolled. So we could not invite them in for the 2 practice workout.
If I were the president of the NAIA and I was trying to explain to a Martian what value that process is, my question is twofold. Do we understand NAIA in general? And I'm not sure we do because I've been around and I don't understand it. And then the second part is, what's the value as compared to something else? Is it to get schools on the map? When somebody says to me they're the 5th ranked team, the 3rd ranked team in the state, or the nation, Lawrence Tech has a big thing about putting in how great they're ranked. Well, they're ranked 2nd in the country and there's 14 teams. A little different than if they're in the MCLA and they're ranked 2nd and there's 156 teams. So sometimes that's to get people in, but what would the president of the NAIA tell me that separates, or what's their selling point?
First of all, and I know this is going to sound cliche, it's about the educational opportunity. Okay. Smaller school, smaller classrooms. We have a 15-to-1 classroom teacher to student ratio. plus the opportunity to play at the collegiate level where some NCAA schools is not realistic.
Right.
Okay, unless you're definitely recruited and signed by them, you know, an athletic scholarship. So I go back to the uniqueness of the small school, and I think there's a niche for a lot of students in today's world in the small school area. Second is continue playing that sport for another 4 years. Is there a difference in terms of the quality of play? Absolutely. All right, I'd be lying if I said there wasn't. There's a reason somebody might be playing for us because he's all right and doesn't have a left hand. All right, but he's a good player.
Sure.
He's a good high school player, and he's a good player for us. But again, it's the total environment that a student can get involved in a small school, not just in athletics, but in the entire campus. Okay, so it's the value that way that you can't put a price on at the NAIA level, NCAA level. And the schools in general are generally private schools, again,
right,
for the NAIA.
See, somebody make an argument to me that, well, it's lesser education, and I say Lawrence Tech may be one of the best engineering schools in the country.
Correct.
Siena Heights has got unbelievable educational value.
Well, I could take our strength. I'm probably going to upset some people at Siena Heights right now, but our strength is education, nursing, criminal justice. All right, our science department. All right, in terms, and our business administration department. I mean, right now, I would sell those departments against anybody else that we're up against. Let's talk recruiting. We're up against them to sell our program for lacrosse. But those are areas that we are very strong in.
What have you liked about college? And I'm not comparing high school and college. They both have their values and they both have their pros and cons. But what's been the upside for you on the college side?
Well,
as a coach,
be able to create your own team. Very simply, be able to create your own team. Talent is one thing, but now I'm going to promote Siena Heights lacrosse a little bit. We want great team players. We've been successful, not because we have the best athletes. We have great team players in our program. They really care for each other. I want players who care for each other, all right, will look out for each other. They'll fight like brothers, okay, but in the end, they really care for each other on and off the field. We're probably the closest knit team on campus. Everybody knows our program on campus. 95% of the time that's good. I hear about the 5%. Okay.
Answer, don't answer this question, and you may not be able to. Your neighbor right now has, I don't know, 12 or 13 guys on his team. You may have more, but your roster is larger than most of the essentially Division III and the NAIA schools in the area, and I attribute that partly because there's less kids. There's more teams for kids.
Correct, there are.
Your roster is pretty healthy as comparison to a lot of the rosters. And if I look at Hope and I've got 35 guys, and they look at you and you got 26 to 28, I can tell you 3 teams in the NIAA that show up for scrimmages, even on the girls' side, don't have enough to field a team. So there's this idea that we're expanding this sport and we're doing all the rest of it. Is the expansion of your program, and I'm not trying to pat you on the back, but it has to be something to do with the coaching staff because you got more kids than your neighbor. I'm not sure what I'm asking, but does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And again, we've been able to sell an idea at Siena Heights, okay? For example, I can honestly tell you, everybody in the history of our program, short history, 10 years, who has come to Siena Heights to play lacrosse, has come to Siena Heights because they wanted to. I can't stress that enough. I have never begged a player to come, all right? And I can honestly say that. If somebody doesn't want to come, hey, I wish them all the best. You know, again, I'm going back to what I said at the beginning of this interview. Why did I go to Dayton? You know, it was the school that I thought the way college should be, all right, in terms of my vision of a college, right? Every student coming in today, I understand that completely, all right? And I tell them, don't come to Siena Heights because of me, all right? Come because we're going to offer you the degree that you're walking across that stage in 4 years, and that's what your parents want to see. And 2, you're coming to be part of a close-knit team. You're in a fishbowl, right? Everybody's going to know what you're doing,
Right.
good or bad. But you also know everybody on campus, or you've seen them.
Right.
There's a familiarity. So that's the environment. When you look at Siena Heights, now Adrian's in Siena, or Adrian College is in Adrian also. We're an island out there. There's only one high school with lacrosse around us.
Right.
All right,
That's the
and we have to convince recruits to literally jump over other opponents to come to Siena Heights when they could live at home and
Right.
go to those schools. So we're trying to sell a lifestyle, an environment that they will be successful in, enjoy. And I will say this finally, I tell every recruit and parent, I never use the word happy. What I want is a satisfied lacrosse player at the end of 4 years. I want a satisfied parent at the end of 4 years.
That's not semantics. That's just a different looking at the apple, a different direction. Right. At 72, if I could use that age, without
Giving away a big secret here.
the fire still seems like it's burning.
It is burning.
As strong as it was?
As strong as it was.
Why do you think that is? The way it is.
I've been fortunate. I grew up in an era where sports was everything. My parents promoted it. They wanted me. They wouldn't let me have a job in high school as long as I was playing a sport. I was supposed to be committed to that activity. If I didn't want to play sports, okay, go out and get a job if that's what you want. But as long as you're playing sports, all right. Second, I enjoy the school environment. I really believe in what education offers. I know it's costly. It has been, and it's getting worse. But I just think that you have that degree, all right? If you're really committed and invest in that degree, you're going to invest in that career, all right? And for me, selling it and then living it, all right, they see that I'm there on time beforehand, excited at practice. And again, I go back to, I love practice, all right, and planning.
Do you think you're as excited now as what you were at the beginning of your career because maybe there's an appreciation for the fact that there may be an end of the road closer than not? And my point to it is that you could be sitting at the beach and vacationing, but when you're an athletic director and you're a teacher and you're just now a lacrosse coach. And age has a way of making things look a lot more in focus. So my question to you is, I know what I want to ask. I'm not sure exactly how I want to ask it. It's got to be more fun now because there's as much responsibility, but it's you realize that there's only so much cake left to eat. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it does. All right. Let me say this. Go back. I'm a lot smarter now than I was.
Well, okay, given that. No, I understand that.
You know, and I have found more efficient ways of doing things.
Let me ask you a better question. Somebody said to me the other day, when are you going to quit? I said, I don't know. I still get up in the morning on game day and have the same feeling I had when I was 19. I don't know how to stop. And if I had to, you might as well cut my arm off. And my point to it is I realize now that there's a finite number of days left for sailing, for whatever it is that we do. And I'm more appreciative now at this age coaching than I have been in a long time. I mean, it's just sometimes, does that...
I don't think about the future in that way.
Okay.
You know, I guess I compartmentalize a lot in terms of that.
Oh, that's
I'm
fabulous.
just looking at the next day,
Okay.
right? Getting ready for first game of the season, first scrimmage of the season.
So health being good, you could be here for a while.
That's the key, all
Okay.
right? And I've said this to everybody, as long as I have my health, right, I'm going to coach. Now, let me say this also. There's certain rigors that go along with coaching at the college level. How long do I coach at the college level? That's an unanswered question. But if I was to stop coaching at the college level, could I help a high school somewhere? You see what I'm saying?
Well,
so some way,
I
shape, or
get it.
all right, I'm going to coach.
Does your age hurt you at a college level? Somebody looks at you and goes, "Oh, here comes that old guy." No, I mean I've occasionally gotten that. They don't have any.
Well,
idea
they
at
haven't
your
said
back.
it to my face
Okay.
yet.
No. But does age hurt you? In a
Who
world
knows?
that's not...
Who knows? Maybe our opponents use it
Okay.
in recruiting. I don't know.
Okay.
I haven't heard it that way. I do get the question from recruits, especially ones who are getting ready to sign, how long are you going to be here?
Right.
Are you going anywhere else?
Right.
All right. That has been asked because of my track record. Would I go somewhere? No, I'm not. I'm not going somewhere else to start another program somewhere
10
else.
years for you is like being in Rome.
That's right. You know, I told, give me longevity pay. You know, that's
right. Well, I'm the last guy to talk. I've had a few trips.
But
yeah.
you know, again, I'm going to keep coaching, no matter what, as long as my health is good.
I asked the question because obviously this is a young man's sport for the most part.
Absolutely.
If you look around the sidelines, there's not a lot of bald and graying guys hanging around. And I find it extraordinary that the younger group doesn't mentor the way we do. And I'm honestly in a situation where I'd like to mentor more. I mentor my staff.
That's a whole issue.
But it's an invisibility of realizing what they don't know. And that's what's killing us right now.
You know, when I first got into coaching, I was fortunate to work as an assistant coach for head coaches who were very organized, all right? And when I say organized, on and off the field. Coaching did not start and stop with that 2-hour window. There was a lot to do beforehand, a lot to do after. And to me today, we live in we've heard the term before, this is an age of instant gratification. I mean, they want answers now, solutions now, problems are solved now, whatever the case may be. They also, you talk about the younger coaches, have to be taught how to prepare. You just don't walk in for a 3 o'clock practice at 2:55. Okay? There's things to be done, set up, problems to be handled. At the end, there's players to talk to. All right? Issues to be taken, trainers, whatever. All right? The issue I have with today, I'm going to use today's generation, which now puts me in that upper stratosphere. All right? They pay half attention. Meaning, as you talk to them today, they're on their phone, listening to you, but on their phone. All right, half attention. You just stop somebody in the hallway. If you're coaching at the high school level right now, stop in the hallway and watch. They're listening to you, but they're looking at who's walking down the hallway. I call it half attention. No, you've got to give full attention, and that's the hardest part to teach somebody right now. And there's so many distractions, right? But that half attention, they have to give their full attention to practice planning, full attention to the practice, full attention to what needs to be taken care of after practice. Okay, that's what today's young coach needs. Now, one of the benefits, to get back to your question of age, I make sure that I hire young assistant coaches because they can relate. Hey, the old guy's having a bad day, he had a bad lunch or whatever today. Right. Put your arm around that kid and walk off the field with him. Let the guy get over his bad dinner. Okay.
What makes you the happiest at this point in your life at coaching?
Coaching wise?
Yeah.
Because I was going to say my family, my grandkids. You know.
I get that.
You know.
What makes you happiest as a coach?
Seeing somebody succeed, putting people in a position of success. All right. Seeing an athlete improve, see that smile on their face when they do something different. I mean, it's the old definition of education. How do you know when learning takes place? When you see a change of behavior. When you see that smile come over somebody's head. Just a nod. Doesn't have to be a grin. Just a nod. Hey, I got it.
Light goes on.
Right. And when you see that, you know you got through to somebody. It's the old thing, can I reach out to one person today and make them a better person? Can I reach out and make them a better player? You know, that's the goal. And that's what, seeing them succeed, it makes me happy.
Well, for your 50 years service, I know lots of folks have had come across your trail and they've been successful because of the parts you've played in their life, and I really appreciate you sitting down and talking with us. And
I appreciate the opportunity, and I just want to see this sport of lacrosse continue to grow, you know, both at the high school level and collegiate level.
Thanks very much, Ed.
All right, thank you.